guys in the dark.
I have an identity theft protection service, and my phone started going off over the 4th of July weekend. Each notice was, "Did you attempt to open a credit account with this merchant?" I probably got 4 or 5 of them, possibly even more. Once the holiday was over, I was able to see that someone had got a hold of my social security number and driver's license, and then tried to open up credit accounts at quite a few merchants. Most were not opened, but the thieves were successful in opening about 3 or 4 of them. It was a pretty painless process to contact these merchants, fraud departments, and then flag them. I get the feeling that every major merchant has these departments now. The accounts were closed, and the merchants notified the credit bureaus that they were fraudulent. I feel very fortunate that I had identity theft protection in place, because if I didn't find out about these accounts until months down the road, my credit could have been severely affected. I now have put credit freezes in place until I can fix things and make everything go away. My first experience with stolen identity had happened when my parents told me to get a credit card, because I thought that they needed financial help sometimes. I told them that they could use it in emergencies. I hardly used it because I was terrified of debt. Then years later, my sister suggested that I look at my balance just to make sure everything was okay. It turned out my mom and my dad had racked up $14,000 in best under my name. I had no idea about this. When I approached them, they said that I told them that they could use it. Well, I did tell them that they could use it in emergencies. I did not consider their everyday and revolving expenses as emergencies. They were horrible with money. And how I know so much better now. I'm currently pursuing them and making them pay every single dollar back to me, one way or another. Back in 2008, my sister was pregnant with my nephew. She was driving unlicensed, unregistered, and uninsured, and got pulled over. She had a warrant out for traffic tickets a year prior. When the cop had asked her for the information, she gave my name, my birthday, and my address. I had never, ever been in trouble with the law, so she thought giving them my name would be cool. She got her 3 tickets in my name, and then went home. 4 years later, I was with a friend, and he got pulled over. My name was run, and the tickets had came up, but now they were warrants for my arrest, 6 of them. 3 for the original tickets, and 3 for failure to appear in court. I asked my family about it, but no one knew anything. 7 years later, my sister tells me she did it, so that she wouldn't go to jail. My whole family had known. They didn't tell me because they didn't want to upset my sister. So my husband made a few calls for me. And since it had been so long after the fact, the warrants and tickets were taken off my record. I'm free and clear now, but I'm still horrified I will go to jail if I'm ever pulled over again. My sister has since apologized, but I'm still pretty salty about it. This video is sponsored by Aura. Do you know what the fastest growing crime rate happens to be in America? I'm talking about identity theft. There's a new crime every 14 seconds. And for years, this crime's rate has been surging and affecting millions of Americans. Now imagine trying to log into your email accounts one day, only to see the password has been changed just hours ago. Then you start getting notifications of activity from your bank account, your credit cards, and even your crypto accounts. That's when suddenly the feeling of shock, panic, anxiety, paranoia, and disbelief, anger and frustration, even guilt set in. That's why I'm excited to partner with Aura, who is sponsoring my video. Aura is an identity theft protection, fraud monitoring, a VPN, password management, and antivirus software, all combined into one easy-to-use application. Aura monitors the dark web for your emails, passwords, social security numbers, and sends alerts fast, right to your phone and your email. The VPN allows you to stay anonymous online by keeping your browsing history and your personal information safe, and even encrypted from hackers. Their antivirus software will block malware and viruses before they infect any of your devices. When it comes to fraud, every second counts. Connect your credit and bank accounts. Get notified of any changes up to 4 times faster than Aura's competitors. Protect you and your family from America's fastest growing crimes. Try Aura free for 2 weeks. See if you or your family's personal information has been compromised. Start your free trial with my code aura.com/NightStalker. The link will be in the description below. Also, when you sign up for the free trial, leave a comment with how many times your personal information was found on the internet. I thought that I had all my ducks in a row. I'm a very careful person. But someone had infiltrated my credit report and my credit history. I feel the need to talk about it because I believe things need to be changed. Me just going back to my everyday life just doesn't do that for me. I was fortunate that the criminal in my case was arrested, pled guilty, and was sentenced to a felony. Because this occurred in the state of Ohio, where we both live, and because it wasn't a violent felony, she was not sentenced to jail time. In February of 2013, I had come home after work on a Friday. I received a phone call. I had gotten a call the day before as well from a major credit card company asking me to call them. I thought that was fraudulent. I thought, oh sure, I'm going to call this credit card company and talk to them about my account. I think it didn't seem legit to me. I cross-checked the phone number. Sure enough, it was to a major credit card company's fraud department. They said someone had tried to obtain a credit card using my very name, address, and social security number. Asked if I had signed up for a card. I told them that I did not. It was more serious than that. I just thought someone had stolen my credit card and had gone out to eat, maybe purchased some items. They said that we flagged this. We'll deactivate the card immediately. Even though there were all these flags, they still sent the credit card out to this address that was not mine. I hung up and thought, some lunatic has all of my information. Do I call the police? Do I check my credit report? I decided that I'll check all 3 of my credit reports, see what the damage was, and then I'll follow up with a police report. There was no relaxing from that point on. It's been about 2 years now, and it's still like it had just happened. I went to Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, where they're supposed to answer 4 security questions, which should be easy if it's you. Which of these 4 addresses have you lived at? Which of these employees have you worked for? I couldn't get 2 of my reports because she had infiltrated my credit history to the point that her information had overrode mine. I can't tell you what that had felt like someone had taken over my life. I'd finally gotten into the 3rd credit report by guessing questions. I scroll down, and I'm just scrolling. There was an account after another account that wasn't mine. Inquiry after inquiry. Overwhelming doesn't even come close to how I had felt. It wasn't like, oh well, I'll just deal with this tomorrow. That was just that one report. The reports don't contain the same activity, so I can only imagine what the other 2 reports showed. I had to call each one of their bureaus, trying to ascertain what an account was opened or when an inquiry was even made. Tell them that this is identity theft. Since it was Friday night, these offices are typically open only Monday through Friday from 9 to 5 when I happen to be at work. I resolved what I could at that very moment. Because I wasn't able to get my other credit card reports online, I had to order them by mail, include my birth certificate, social security card, utility bills, you name it. I found out that I was a victim early on, after she had been using my information for 6 months. But still, she attempted to open up in the neighborhood of around 50 accounts. So I can only imagine how many accounts would have been opened if I hadn't found out as early as I did. There's no threshold for what a criminal will do with your social security number. They don't go, I'll just use this a few times, and then I'll have a moral compass about it. They'll see whatever in the world they can access, goods and services from, and that mess is left to nobody but the victim. I have a police report and FTC affidavit, which any victim will find out that they need. I had the police department here in my house the night that I was a victim. I was fortunate to have that type of attention, but the police report and affidavit aren't even good enough. That weekend I had placed a fraud alert on my credit reports. I eventually froze them with an alert. You get calls, and the next day I got multiple calls. I would get a call from Discover. Someone just called. It sounds fraudulent. You have a flag. Did you just call? No. I couldn't keep up with her. She's out there calling, trying to get credit cards, and then I'm finding out about it. She looks more credible because she has a social security number. Why not give her credit? It took me a week or two to get the reports. When you're going through this as a victim, it's not like they say, "Hey, now that you're a victim, here are the 50 times that a fraudulent account was attempted to be created." You find all this stuff out along the way. Some things, like accounts that went to collections, didn't show up on my credit report right away. Like 5 months ago, I ordered my credit reports, and lo and behold, there's a medical collection agency. That one scares me more than any of them. To think that she utilized my social security number to get medical attention, that's a whole another realm. I really don't know who she is. I had never heard her name in my life. She happens to live a town over from me. She was using my maiden name and a 10-year-old address. So perhaps at some point and place in my community I had trusted, like a school or a doctor's office, or even an employer. She came across that kind of information. I can only make assumptions and jump to conclusions at that point. A 10-year-old name and address were good enough for companies to take at face value. It just goes to show when you hear about children becoming victims of identity theft. These companies don't say, "This child happens to be 7 years old." They probably don't want a mortgage. There's no further background check being done. I tried as part of the police to find out where she got this information. Sadly, she never had to say where she got it as part of the plea, which is infuriating, because I'm sure I'm not the only victim from the place where she had access to my information. But if this continues to pop up in the future, I can say this person was convicted in this case against me. But the companies aren't interested in pursuing her. She has nothing. So the companies just continue to come after me. She hardly knew anything about me, but was able to get credit from utility companies and stores. The credit card companies, for the most part, were more likely to catch this and flag it as fraud. Utilities were huge. Phones were huge. Electric, heat, cable. The criminal even took a subscription to the local newspaper. Nothing was off limits. Funny part was, she was very easy to track down. She had a cable turned on at her apartment. Goods and services were mailed to her address. When she got signed up for a utility or a phone, she used her name. Since it was linked to my social security number, it updated with fraudulent information. That's why I couldn't access my credit reports initially. They had all of her information. It even had a past employer where I never even worked. The police department built a case against her. A warrant had gone out for her arrest. A neighboring community arrested her. She initially did not plead guilty. We had to go through the court, grand jury, and the grand jury indicted her. And then the pre-trial and trial. She eventually did not plead guilty, but since it's a non-violent felony, she did not serve jail time. She did community service instead, which is all the more infuriating, because identity theft is a revenue stream for criminals. This outcome means it's much easier to be a criminal of identity theft than a criminal manufacturing drugs. We saw each other in court, never said anything to each other. I have no use for her. All the companies have different ways in which they have to prove that you are who you say you are. When you are a victim of identity theft, you're put in the position of having to prove who you are to a greater extent than the criminal had to get goods and services from them. You're treated like you're trying to get out of paying for something. One company wanted me to release the company and its affiliates, representative agents, and employees to contact and obtain information from all references: personal, professional, my employers, public agencies, licensing authorities, and educational institutes. It goes on and on. Here I am, a victim of identity theft. I have to contact my employer and where I went to school. One account I found out about from a collection agency. So I then needed to work it out with both the collection agency and the original company. I sent all my information to both of them. They said that it would be taken off. 6 months later, I get a call from a different collection agency for that very same balance, with interest. I had to go back through the whole thing. We've had an attorney pro bono work on this case, and the medical case as well. And finally, the attorney sent this company a cease and desist letter. The original company sent a letter saying it had been removed. I'm going to frame that and put it above my fireplace for fear that they're going to pop back up once again. In the end, a number of companies flagged inquiries as identity theft on my credit report. Nonetheless, that inquiry shouldn't be there since I didn't make it. I do hold those companies just as responsible as the criminal. I think there's a lot more due diligence than they can extend at the onset. A number of companies were able to flag and say, this is identity theft. But a number of companies allowed it to happen. We hear about a hacking here, a hacking there. We're becoming accustomed to them. These companies can't just throw out the latest and greatest technology and say, this is going to make things easier for you. How might this affect us negatively? Who can get access to any of this? The companies make transactions easier for themselves, yet I and millions of others are stuck cleaning up this mess. The government isn't much help either. You're bounced around from one agency to another. If you're an identity theft victim, here are the 400 steps that you have to do. As for my medical record, I have to collect all my medical information, make sure that it happens to be mine. And then there are HIPAA laws. If her information is in there, then she's protected. It's overwhelming. You don't feel like you have anyone helping you. You're just on your own. I think people don't really understand what identity theft really is. I could have put myself in that category before. People think it's credit card identity theft. Someone went to Target and bought something, so why are you all upset about this? In that case, you call your credit card company and say, this happens to be a fraudulent charge. Fill out some paperwork, and then get on with your life. That wasn't the case for me. I had to prove who I am. I had to go through the court system. I had to go through the grand jury. I had to give testimony. I'm very fortunate in my case that I had someone to point to. Sometimes people aren't as fortunate as I was. It's the most time-consuming, upsetting, emotional event you have to go through. Somebody went in and easily removed my information, had their information override mine on all important, encompassing in documents, my credit report. You're told from a young age to establish credit responsibly. So down the road you can make big purchases like a vehicle or even a home. Meanwhile, some lunatic has barely any information about you and gets access to all these goods and services. Yet I had to go and fill out all this affidavit stuff and turn in my utility bills, all my personal data to remove this fraudulent charge. The companies didn't ask anywhere near that when they extended the credit, but now that it affects their bottom line, they turn around and make me do all of this. The advice that I would give for others to prevent identity theft: question when someone asks you for your social security number. I'm shocked by how often, when I ask, do you really need that? They tell me no. Well, then don't ask if you don't need it then. If you're a victim of identity theft, take notes, the date, who you talked to, what they had said. I can't tell you how many times I've had to refer back to my notes. I have a spreadsheet of no less than 200 entries. You also have to mail everything certified. It's the cost of making things okay. You have to go on top of this, get a hold of it. Otherwise, it will just snowball out of control. So be cautious with your information going forward. I always have been cautious, so I can't do anything differently. Even if you do all the right things and shred things, ask all the right questions, that really won't prevent you from being a victim. Wherever your information is held, where you file your taxes, where you buy a car, go to school, get a job, they all have your social security number. Now imagine the horror of waking up to news that you had accumulated hundreds of $1,000s in debt after someone had used your identity for unauthorized purchases. This is exactly what had happened to me. My name is John. I'm a Connecticut salesman. The guy who was later known as Jerry Phillips, a 23-year-old who had stolen my identity, went on a shopping spree that included purchases to Home Depot, JCPenney, Sears, Lowe's, and even bought 2 cars from Ford, a Kawasaki, and a Harley. In just 4 months, Jerry was able to accumulate over $265,000 in purchases. He was later found and arrested and imprisoned for 3 years. He even went as far as to apologize to me, saying, "I'm sorry. I wish I could make it up to you." I felt that the nightmare was over with, especially with the criminal behind bars, and even verbally acknowledging that his regret over the crime. But despite all of this, and also a letter from the Justice Department confirming that I was a victim, I still somehow find myself owing over $140,000 to different creditors. Waking up in the middle of the night, Realizing that federal agents had just entered your home with guns pointed and slapped with handcuffs certainly qualifies as one of the most horrifying ordeals in anyone's life. And this is exactly what has happened to me. My name is Carlos. I'm a UPS driver accused of being involved in $1 million money laundering operation headed by a Wachovia bank employee. I had spent close to 2 weeks in prison and another 7 months under house arrest before federal prosecutors realized that it happened to be a mistake, with the prospect of losing my job because I was unable to inform my boss at UPS that I couldn't report for work because I had been arrested. I had contemplated the implication of my arrest. I later found out that I was included in the list of 13 co-conspirators. I asked the agents what I was being charged with, and the agents had answered money laundering. I was also presented with Wachovia check that happened to be bearing my name, and replied that this was not my signature. After spending nearly 2 weeks in detention, I was released on a $100,000 bond. I resumed work for UPS, but was only allowed to work during the day, but remained under house arrest during the night. In a country where everybody is presumed innocent, the burden of proving yourself innocent was squarely on my shoulders. I had taken polygraph tests to my lawyer's advice and passed, and then went to a local branch of Wells Fargo, the one who took over Wachovia, and asked the address of the checking account that was used to launder the money. Now see, the big question here is, how does a bank protect your personal information, like social security number and where you live, especially for closed accounts? My name is Bruce. I'm an avid online shopper. I have only dealt with large retailers and secure sites. Nevertheless, I was swept up as part of a massive UK anti-predator police offensive operation. I was arrested on charges of possessing, downloading, and intending to distribute indecent images of children. My home and work computers were confiscated, along with a range of storage devices and media. Later, the investigators had determined that my credit card details had been entered into a computer in Jakarta, Indonesia, and that I was actually using the card at a South London restaurant at almost exactly the same moment. My credit card details had been taken from one of the many popular online shopping sites that I frequented, most likely as a result of a data breach. Although the situation was eventually resolved, that damage had already been done, being arrested and accused of what is probably one of the worst crimes known to man, losing my job because of it, having my reputation run through the mud. It's definitely a living nightmare. Back in 2008, my sister was pregnant with my nephew. She was driving unlicensed, unregistered, and uninsured, and got pulled over. She had a warrant out for traffic tickets a year prior. When the cop had asked her for the information, she gave my name, my birthday, and my address. I had never, ever been in trouble with the law, so she thought giving them my name would be cool. She got her 3 tickets in my name, and then went home. 4 years later, I was with a friend, and he got pulled over. My name was run, and the tickets had came up. But now they were warrants for my arrest. 6 of them. 3 for the original tickets, and 3 for failure to appear in court. I asked my family about it, but no one knew anything. 7 years later, my sister tells me she did it, so that she wouldn't go to jail. My whole family had known. They didn't tell me because they didn't want to upset my sister. So my husband made a few calls for me. And since it had been so long after the fact, the warrants and tickets were taken off my record. I'm free and clear now, but I'm still horrified I will go to jail if I'm ever pulled over again. My sister has since apologized, but I'm still pretty salty about it. My name is Linda. I went to work for Barry in July of 1997. As part of the requirements for the job, I was asked for my social security number, date of birth, and a copy of my driver's license. 1 week after I had started working, Barry had gotten a cell phone using my personal information. Barry went on to apply for credit cards in my name. Barry had used these credit cards and the cell phone for 5 months before I was even aware of it. I found out when I received a final notice before collections in November of 1997. Due to my work with the local police department and district attorney. Barry was prosecuted for identity theft. I still had to contact the credit bureaus to put a lock on my credit status for many years.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.